Performing an underhood inspection is more than just an opportunity to add service revenue. It's an opportunity to help your customer protect the second largest investment they'll ever make. And that's the topic for today's edition of The Trainer. My first job in the automotive business was as a service station attendant in the mid-70s. Back then, every community had neighborhood gas stations where car owners could get their tank filled and their car serviced by someone they knew and trusted. Back in those days, cars required a lot more maintenance and upkeep than they do today. So whenever a customer brought their vehicle in for gas, we were trained to ask, "Can I check under the hood for you?" This gave us an opportunity to check the fluid level and condition, check the belts, hoses, and get a visual inspection to see if there's anything there that shouldn't be. This was a valuable service for our customers, and it didn't hurt us either. If we uncovered a service need that they weren't aware of, it gave us the opportunity to perhaps earn that service business. Now today, the neighborhood gas station is all but long gone. People are pumping their own gas. And when was the last time that you saw anyone opening up their hood and checking their own fluids and belts and hoses? Who's doing it for them now? No, that task is now left up to us, the automotive service professional. We should be offering to perform a complimentary safety and maintenance check on every car that comes in, even offering to show customers how to perform many of these checks themselves. Why? Because we're the experts in their eyes, and they rely on our expertise to help them take care of the second largest investment they'll ever make. Now we're going to focus on the under-hood items in this edition of The Trainer, and it's my hope that if your shop doesn't already have an inspection process in place, that you'll take some of these items and put together and create one of your own. And keep in mind, when you're doing these inspections, do it with your customer's best interests at heart. They'll know the difference and they'll admire you for it, and you'll end up earning a lot more repeat customers and additional service business than any of the time that you spent doing the inspections for them in the first place. Let's get started. Now, one of the things I want you guys to keep in mind while I'm going through these checks is that it's not so much the maintenance needs that I'm looking for. I mean, I can access that, especially for things like the engine oil, through a lot of different ways. Maybe there's a sticker on the windshield, or the vehicle has an oil life indicator on the instrument panel I can access, or even my own service records that will let me know when the last time a lot of these fluids were serviced. Now, what I'm looking for are mechanical or repair conditions that are starting to show themselves, and we want to catch them before they become serious problems. So, for example, when we're checking the engine oil, I don't want to check just the level. I mean, certainly that's important. If it's low, I want to know why. Is this a trend, or is this something that's recently started? Is there any indication in the fluid of the presence of anybody that's not supposed to be there? For example, do I see any kind of foamy condition that might indicate a coolant leak getting into the oil supply? These are the kinds of things I want to look for on the oil level. All right, let's move on to the next item. Okay, the next item I want to touch on is the coolant. Certainly the condition and the quantity of coolant in the system is important. We want to make sure that the system is full, and if it's low for some reason, if the coolant reservoir level has dropped for some reason, we want to know why. The coolant is a closed system. It doesn't disappear by itself. But more importantly, I want to know what the condition of the coolant is. And you've heard me say this before. Even if it's an extended life coolant, the inhibitor packages in the coolant can be depleted prematurely by a number of different causes. So the coolant may look just fine, but not be able to do the job it's intended to do. The best way to check that is by the use of a coolant test strip. And there's several on the market that you can choose from. It'll help you look at the acidity of the coolant, the reserve alkalinity of the coolant, and of course give you an idea of the mixture, the rate ratio between coolant and water. Another key thing that we need to keep an eye on. The next critical fluid that I want to talk about is the brake fluid. That's another fluid that you should be sure to check every time your customer brings their vehicle into the shop. Like the others, this is a sealed system. There's really nowhere that fluid should go unless there's some kind of a problem. And usually it's one of two problems that you're going to be looking for, either a leak in the system or brake pads are starting to wear down and that space behind the caliper pistons is being taken up by the fluid from the reservoir. Now here's something I see all too often. People want to top off the brake fluid when it's low. Well, don't do that. You see, there's a warning system built in to let the driver know when those brake pads need attention, and it's based on the level in the reservoir. You know that little warning light on the dash? Well, yeah, I mean, there's a switch for it right there on the side of the reservoir. So if you keep adding fluid to the reservoir to keep it topped off for your customer, you're not doing him any favors. As those brake pads wear, that fluid level is supposed to drop down to the point where it turns on the light and advises the customer to get those brake pads checked. If you keep filling it up, you're taking that warning system away, and you could end up with a customer that's driving metal to metal when it really didn't have to. Now, in the condition of the fluid is another concern. How often do you service that? How do you exchange the fluid? We've covered that in some other videos in the past, but just to recap here, some manufacturers don't list a service specification for it, some do. Moisture used to be the thing that we looked for in brake fluid, but that's not the issue that it used to be. What's the thing now we're looking for? We're looking for the pH balance. Again, just like in the coolant that we just talked about, there's an inhibitor package, additive package in the brake fluid to help protect the metal components in the system. When that inhibitor package starts to break down, corrosion can start to take place, even with very little moisture in the fluid, and it's going to show up. We used to test by copper. Now the key is looking at the pH balance. Why? Because if we flush the system once, whatever copper particles that were in there, they're gone, and they're not going to magically reappear as the system continues to wear. So now the key is we're looking for pH balance. Best way to test that, use a test strip. You know, it's increasingly rare for a vehicle to even have a dipstick to check the transmission fluid, isn't it? Now some are sealed, or some require some method using a special tool or other special procedure, usually from underneath the vehicle, with the vehicle at a certain operating temperature specified in the service information. So make sure that if you're going to check the transmission fluid, you go to the OEM service information and you find out exactly how they want you to do that. If you can't actually see the fluid, physically see the fluid, well, just like we did with the engine oil level, are there any indications that something might be amiss? Is there anything kind of silvery or glinty in there? Is there any sign that there's a coolant or water mixture in there that we need to be aware of? And of course, the fluid level. Again, it should stay relatively constant. If it's low, then there's a reason for it, and it's something that would require further inspection so that you can help your customer avoid a more costly repair down the road. Now, as far as power steering systems go, again, with the move towards electronics, power steering systems are also getting more and more scarce. Same with the fluid level. Again, level. If it's low, why is it low? Overall condition, does it look gritty, damaged? If you're replacing a power steering component, whether it's the rack or a pump, and the fluid looks kind of questionable, not a bad time to go ahead and recommend a fluid exchange at that time so that you make sure there's nice clean fluid running through those new components. And then last but not least for today, belts and hoses. Again, we've done quite a bit on looking at serpentine belts, and if you've been paying attention, you know you can't go by a visual inspection alone on the belts. They can look just fine and be completely worn out. How are you going to know for sure? We'll get you one of these belt assessment gauges. Every belt manufacturer makes a version of their own. Dayco and Gates, for example, two different tools here. And you can get them fairly easily. Most of the jobbers probably have them in stock. You just got to ask for a few of them. Keep them in your toolbox. Check the belt condition using these tools. It's vitally important. If the belt starts slipping, it can cause accelerated wear on any of the accessory drive components. So why would your customer need to pay for a $500 alternator or a $1,000 water pump job when all you had to do was use a little tool and replace the belt when the belt was worn out? Same thing with the hoses. Hose condition inspection procedures haven't changed. You still want to make sure that they're soft and pliable. Pay special attention to where they're connected to the various cooling system components. A lot of times internal electrolysis will cause issues right at those points. So if you start feeling it kind of scrunchy or crunchy in there, or you can see cracks developing in the rubber, that's a good time to replace it. Again, Like with the power steering system we talked about, if you're doing some type of major replacement, whether it's a water pump job, radiator, something along those lines, and the hoses have been around for a while, it certainly isn't going to hurt to recommend them at the same time. It does save your customer some overlapping labor. Now, the under hood inspection is just one part of the overall vehicle safety and maintenance inspection that every shop should incorporate it as part of their daily process. Every vehicle that comes in should be given the opportunity to have the service performed. If you do this on every vehicle and you do it with the customer's best interest in mind, you'll find that you'll help your customer save money, your shop will make more money, and you'll be giving the customer the full benefit of your expertise and position yourself as the place to go for service, repair, and maintenance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Trainer.